So, with the 2026 Formula One season being well underway, there are two things people have been noticing. One, of course, being the new cars and all the new things there are to talk about them. Lauren knows there's a ton. And the second thing people have been noticing is just how utterly dog shit and terrible Aston Martin are. And I'll cut them some slack. Williams have been mad disappointing, and Cadillac aren't doing much better than Aston, but there is a reason why everyone is fixated on Aston Martin, where Williams already have an understanding of their issues and history being on their side when it comes to recovery, along with Cadillac being a new team with all the inexperience in that. No one is cutting Aston some slack, and for good reason too. This team has proven to be way more competent in the past and a severe force to be reckoned with in the midfield. I mean, they were the kings of the midfield for the longest time, and it was always a good day when they were on that podium. But now, nothing fills me with more anger and disappointment than the modern Aston Martin team. Back then, they had little resources to work with and had to really work hard for all of their results as the sport transitioned away from smaller based teams. Now, when they seemingly got their wish of investment and more resources, they have just devolved and left nothing to be happy about. There are a variety of things to blame for this, but to understand them, I think we need to look back at the history of this team, because just like with most teams on the grid, Aston Martin were always Aston Martin, and with each past team they were tells a different story, and I personally believe that all of these stories can explain what the hell has happened, because at the moment it looks real bleak, and while I have no doubt they'll recover in performance thanks to their infinite resources, I also have no doubt they could find themselves in another pickle very soon, all by their own doing. So the task today is simple. Let's go through the previous identities of Aston Martin and see how those teams did, why they went under, and how every team has led to the current Aston Martin shit show we are familiar with today. Go subscribe if you are new to lead the revolution, and let's get to quacking now.
A good weather for a race, but especially for a talk.
The story of Aston Martin begins all the way back in 1999. Eddie Jordan, who already had a racing team in the lower formulas, made the big boy call to rebrand the team to Jordan Grand Prix and enter Formula One for the 1991 season. This was already a really bold call, since by the 90s, it was clear the sport was starting to head into a more publicized and, more importantly, expensive direction, and small-owned family or single-owner teams would start to find trouble soon unless they could establish a big winning presence in the sport like Williams. And also, not do any dumb financial ventures like other family-owned teams in the past. Anyways, none of this would dissuade Eddie Jordan from entering the sport, and for 1991, they hired veteran of the sport Andrea de Cesaris and a guy with no anger issues at all named Bertrand Gatshot. Considering this is their first season in a time where cars were blowing up for only 70% of the season, Jordan actually had a fantastic first year in the sport. De Cesaris and Gatshot were able to score some good points at some races, and in Belgium, De Cesaris was on the podium in second before his car did unfortunately fail. However, that wasn't the big story with Jordan in Belgium, since as we know, Gatshot, who did have anger issues, beat the bricks out of a taxi driver, which landed him in prison, and with Eddie Jordan needing a new driver, they just give the Michael Schumacher his debut in the sport. Schumi qualified in 7th on debut, and despite his engine also blowing up in the race, it was enough for Flavio Briatore to steal Schumi away from Eddie and put him in a much faster Benetton car. Eddie Jordan was obviously not happy one bit and tried to sue them for stealing Michael away, however, lost the lawsuit since Michael didn't actually sign a contract with Jordan yet. Good one, guys. Anyways, 1991 was a great start for Jordan, but they kind of blew their load too much, and for 1992 and 93, they kind of suffered in backmarker hell. Well, actually, that's not even true, since when they did finish races, they were decent enough. They weren't too far from points. But did you catch that, though? When they did finish races, since, oh yeah, baby, it's the 90s. Despite that, 1993 wouldn't be too terrible, since for that year, the team would debut two new drivers in Rubens Barrichello and Eddie Irvine, who, as we know today, were no bad drivers at all, to say the least. 1994 would also see the team back on form as they finished 5th in the constructors and got their very first podium in Japan with Barrichello. From this point to about 1997, the team would just be this solid midfield team that got the odd podium here and there and were severely respected by everybody in the F1 world. 1996 saw the departure of Irvine as he headed off to Ferrari, and 1997 saw the departure of Rubens as he went off to Stewart GP. And you would think this could signal an end to Jordan's form and they would be backmarkers again, right? Nope. For 1997, they hired Giancarlo Fisichella, who, fun fact, was the last winning Italian in the sport before Antonelli, and hired Ralf Schumacher, brother to Michael. Considering these drivers had no experience working for Jordan, they still finished 5th in the constructors yet again, and even got a couple of podiums with Fisichella. However, there was a falling out between Ralf and Jordan in 1998 at Spa, which probably turned out to be Jordan's most prominent race ever. In the deep pouring rain that saw like literally every car DNF, Damon Hill, who was hired to replace Fisichella in 1998, would win the team's first ever race, but not without controversy, of course. Ralf Schumacher was in second and catching up to Damon, but with the team not wanting to risk anything, or maybe for the publicity of Hill winning, told Ralf to hold position. Michael, who was already mad after a crash with David Coulthard, told Jordan, "Fuck you and your stupid ass beard," and bought out Ralph's contract. Little did anyone know, though, this was a blessing in disguise, since for 1999, they now had Heinz Harald Frentzen and Damon Hill retiring at the end of the season, which, trust me, is a blessing. For 1999, Frentzen could maybe have fought for the title had he had better reliability, but regardless, he still earned 2 wins and a pole position to round out the team's best season ever. However, as with all stories in life, there is a peak and then a fall off. For the 2000s, the team would be defined by mistake after mistake. 2000 saw terrible reliability. 2001 saw a Honda rights issue that saw Frentzen forced to leave the team for Takuma Sato and their first year without a podium since 1993. 2002 saw driver performances decrease with Sato and Fisichella, who somehow returned, along with more engine issues. 2003 barely saw any points. However, one of them ironically was a win in Brazil that wasn't even celebrated on the podium thanks to a mistake by the FIA. But Jordan had their mistakes too, and this mistake arguably led to their downfall for good. Eddie Jordan sued Vodafone for 150 million euros since they were supposed to sign with Jordan, but instead signed to Ferrari. However, the basis of this claim was, I shit you not, a trust me bro verbal agreement Eddie had with Vodafone. And look, call it deceiving, but if there was never a contract signed, you can't just say you had an agreement. Jordan lost a lawsuit, and with a giant debt to be paid, Fisichella was let go for 2004, and that same year would be their final season in the sport with a last place finish in the constructors. I mean, they were ahead of Minardi, but that isn't saying much. Jordan were on the grid for 2005, but Eddie wasn't. He had sold the team to the Midland group, and just like that, Jordan were all but gone in the sport. But Jordan, of course, couldn't leave the sport quietly. In the US Grand Prix for 2005, they had miraculously gotten on the podium one final time in an extreme show of pace and determination to still be in the sport. Where's all the cars, though? For 2006, the Jordan name would be completely eliminated in the sport, and they would now be called the Midland F1 team, where they could build a new dynasty under new leadership for the future. In 2007, they were sold to the Dutch car company Spyker, where, hear me out, this time they'll be able to build a new dynasty under new leadership for the future, featuring the Winkelhawk. In 2008, they were sold to an Indian businessman who rebranded the team to Force India, and this time, guys, for real, it would stick. For a long time, might I add. Their debut season in 2008 was nothing to write home about, considering the team was basically nothing for the past 2 years. Ironically enough, though, Giancarlo Fisichella found himself back here for the 3rd time after 2 stints with Jordan ended spectacularly, so let's hope he could just have a normal time 3rd time around. Again, 2008 was nothing. Both drivers of Giancarlo Fisichella and Adrian Sutil failed to score a single point, but that don't matter. 2009 was new regulations, baby. If Force India wanted to go back to the top, just like in their Jordan days, this was their opportunity. So come 2009, and nope, they fucking suck. Nothing of note came from this year other than another performance at Spa. What the hell is up with this team at Spa? Where Fisichella got 2nd place and pole position, and at the next race, Sutil will get P4. Other than that, though, nothing. 2010 was the real opportunity, however. Teams swarmed the grid this year, and this is not an exaggeration. All of them were bums, and with Force India now understanding the cars better, they could seriously find performance, and find it they did. The team would regain status as a midfield contender with an odd highlight race here and there, and overall, good points were scored with Sutil and Liuzzi, who replaced the retiring Fisichella. And from 2011 to 2013, the team were doing pretty good. They cycled between drivers like worst F1 pundit ever Paul di Resta, professional unlucky driver Nico Hülkenberg, and criminal mastermind Adrian Sutil, and together they docked to score some good points and establish their midfield dominance. And to be honest, nothing really changed from the team 2014 onwards to 2018, except for one thing. They start to score podiums again once they finally locked in some good consistent drivers to be their pair, these being Checo Perez and Nico Hülkenberg. However, knowing Hülkenberg's history, Checo was the only one getting the podiums, which was still great for Force India, mind you. Even though they couldn't find the performance to reach the highs of Jordan, they certainly weren't bad and were firmly the established midfield team that, should the opportunity arise, they will be be on that podium. This is all being done, by the way, with little resources and facilities where other teams have big money and big facilities. This was mighty respectable by them. However, 2017 is when things started going downhill again. Nico Hülkenberg left for Renault after calling the pink car gay, and in his place, Esteban Ocon would be hired. Ocon is a good driver, of course, so nothing really should have changed, right? Well, Perez v Ocon was like Optimus Prime v Megatron. It was always on side for these two, and in critical races like Baku, where a podium was practically guaranteed, they threw it all away in their fights. But the real trouble came in 2018. Despite an early podium at Baku, ironically, trouble wasn't rising for the simple fact, well, their owner was a literal fraud. He was giving out money to everyone, and more importantly, taking money from everyone, and when it was time to pay up, oh, he's gone. Well, shit, Force India now has no money left, and without any funds coming through, they're just gonna disappear despite good performances. Well, thanks to a bunch of dudes, the team was placed into administration, which meant they could continue until a new owner is found. Enter Lawrence Stroll. He bought the team, and for the remainder of 2018 to about 2020, the team will now be known as Racing Point and be driven by Sergio Perez for his key role in keeping the team afloat, and oh god, Lance Stroll. The rest of 2018 was good with more points finishes, but with Ocon now out for Stroll in 2019, the team did take a dip. Only a slight dip though, since McLaren took their place now as midfield masters, but points were still scored by Checo and nearly got a podium in Germany with Stroll, unfortunately. 2020 would ultimately be their final year though, as Lawrence Stroll would buy a major stake in Aston Martin and announce that the Racing Point team will then become Aston Martin Formula One team. Despite the team losing their single owner status, it was inevitable it was incoming, since this lifestyle was becoming less suitable as the sport grew more expensive. I mean, even Williams had to be bought out, but it is sad regardless. But as for 2020, wow, Racing Point were really good this year with Checo and Stroll, largely thanks to their very original car design that totally wasn't based on the previous year's championship winning car. And as they rebranded into Aston Martin for 2021, are similar performances going to carry over? No. 2021 was fine, in the same way an aneurysm is fine. Like, they weren't trash, but points were more scarce, even with Perez being ousted for four-time champion Sebastian Vettel. There were still notable results like a P2 in Baku and another P2 in Hungary thanks to Seb, but generally points were more rare and had some serious catching up to do. But guys, new ground effects are coming in for 2022. This is the perfect time to debut a new car to take the world by storm. Wait a minute. Yeah, just like 2009, the big reg change year after a disappointing year somehow ended up just as disappointing, if not more, since Aston genuinely went nowhere. While teams like McLaren, Alfa Romeo, and Alpine made progress in the midfield, Aston did not, which subsequently sent them backwards. Management was also hell, since where everyone had stable jobs at Force India, now everyone was being moved or fired out of the team, including Otmar, who had the ship stable for so long. So for 2023, Aston looked at previous years to understand how they could be good again. Oh, that's right, just copy the champions car. So for 2023, Fernando Alonso was hired to replace a retiring Vettel, and here we go. Podium after podium for Alonso. No wins, but enough podiums to be third in the standings and lead Aston to bigger and better things. They didn't improve. Of course they didn't. The team is so focused on moving upwards that they probably aren't double checking their upgrades, since every one of them that goes on at best adds like 100th to the car. Most just feel like sidesteps, which may as well be a step back. And while in 2023 it wasn't much of an issue thanks to their competitiveness at first, it became a real big issue in 2024 and especially 2025. In the span of 2 years, they went from constant podiums to constant P12s. And throughout all of this, more team personnel keep being moved around, fired, and hired, including notable names like Andy Cowell and Adrian Newey, but not even they can fix the issues at Aston. And as we head into 2026 with the new Honda deal signed, the team debuted one of the worst Formula One cars in the modern era, so bad that it literally hurts the drivers. So what the hell went wrong? How did the teams once known as Jordan and Force India, teams notorious for making something out of nothing, lead to Aston Martin, a team notorious for making nothing out of something? Well, good old mismanagement. I don't know what you guys want me to say. I'm not a team principal. From the outside looking in, the team just fell apart the moment they got quadruple their original resources. I don't know if that made them careless or simply not understand the modern era, but mismanagement is killing the team. When one guy fails, they're ousted for someone else who will inevitably fail and keep the cycle repeating. How do they fix fix this? Hell if I know, but may I introduce the Aston team to an idea called trusting the process. How about we build a base first, which may not be good, but let's mold it into something good. What they've done a lot recently is just copy what makes someone else good, but not understand why it's good. That's just my game theory though. The team is certainly a mess, and it almost makes me wish the team was back to working out of a McDonald's with a wrench and hammer, for Christ's sakes. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Aston. I really do miss the smaller teams in F1. I guess there is Haas and Cadillac today, but small family owned teams. Again, I suppose Haas fits this case, which is probably why I'm a Haas fan. We could all support a team that isn't some car company, so go find one today or else. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for the continued support. Make sure to join if you want cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe since it really helps me out, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.